whether they don't mind if it's a little bit cool. And so they are massive and showy, and mine are older plants. So if you started some this year, it's going to be a good year. But if you have new babies, remember, early August, you're going to have to water supplement because they won't have deep enough roots yet. But in answer to other things, yeah, if you're still going to go grab I know some of the plant centers have some plants on sale now, and they're bargains. There's no doubt about it. I've looked at them, fondled them, and thought, self-control, and that's been real hard. But look at the tag, because, for instance, if you got a tomato plant, if you got one that's going to bear fruit in 70 days, you're good to go. But if you have an indeterminate that's probably going to take 90 or 120 days, you're going to get into some cool nights, and that production might slow down. So just check the tabs and choose accordingly.
Do you ever feel bad, though, when you're in those different shopping centers and you see them? I just buy them because I feel like I have to save the plant.
You must be great at an animal shelter.
Oh, my.
Got to keep you away.
That's why we live on the funny farm, yes. Well, I tell you, last year, it was around Christmas, actually, I ended up with a Christmas cactus that I bought at a local place because it looked so sad.
And is it happy now?
It is. It bloomed at a weird time, and so I called Chris at Expressions. I said, I don't know if this is supposed to be blooming. She's like, it just means it's happy.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you can actually tease something like a Christmas cactus, because if you are a little stingy with water, not to the point where they're laying down going, save me, but a little stingier than usual, and then you start watering regularly, and if you have a bloom booster kind of fertilizer, they'll kick in and they'll set buds and go for it. So
yeah, this little guy
makes it fun.
Just took off. Yeah.
There you go. So that paid off for you, and good for you for being the humane
saving
person.
the plant.
That's right. It goes with your chosen profession. You're going to just save whatever you can.
No, it's awful.
At
it's an
any
awful
cost.
habit. I did that with a hanging begonia plant too, because it looked really sad at this place, and I didn't need it. Like, my flowering was done, but I felt like I needed to save it.
Well, good enough.
But listen, it's taken off. We're okay. We're going to make it.
And you're going to enjoy it.
That's right.
So,
that's okay.
You know, I always say that's cheaper than therapy.
That's right. See, save the plant, save your mind.
Save your soul.
Right. That's right.
That's right. I think that's awesome. So here are a few things you can be mindful of this time of year. You know, we have had just a little bit of moisture lately.
Just a little.
I mean, if I don't get a flotation device for my mower, I'm just going to have to get a couple of goats, because we got a couple of low areas that haven't been mowed for quite a number of weeks, and it's flopping over. It's that tall, so it's going to probably be a raking job, or else it'll clog up the mower when we finally can get to it. But this is a great time to pull weeds. The ground is moist. They're easy to pull. Hopefully you're still getting them when they're young. And we all know, just, take even a 5-minute walk before you get in the car to go to work, and pull 5 minutes worth of weeds. And you'll come back and go, wow, look what I did in 5 minutes. You don't have to go out there and do it for 3 or 4 hours. And I think it's a mindset, like, just, kind of stop scrolling on your devices for 5 or 10 minutes, go out, have a little nature. I love how we have all these new terms now that we are going to bathe in nature. Because, old farts like me grew up and you were out in nature because your mother wouldn't let you in the house during the day because she had her stuff to do, and you could just go outside and play and try not to get in trouble and come home when you were either starving or it was dark. And but now we have therapists who will guide you to bathe in nature and teach you literally how to take a walk. And I hope some of you are out there chuckling a little bit, because the first time I actually heard a seminar on this very topic, I chuckled a little, and then I thought, there are probably people who live in a different setting than I do that is really lacking. So good for them. And if it takes a little conducted event in order to get them started on doing it, they'll eventually do it on their own because they'll find all the benefits and all the fun. So anyway, so of course it's time to fertilize. If you have potted plants, whatever fertilizer was in there when they were potted, some people use a slow release fertilizer, or were getting regular, I call it intravenous fertilizer at the growing nursery, where they get blue water in order to have that good boost. So we all buy those plants because they look so nice. They're now hungry. They're going to be a little puny looking. They're going to slow down their production. So it's time to pinch them or give them a trim and fertilize them, because as much rain as we've had, all of that has pretty much diluted and washed out or been utilized by the plant. So it's time for more. And if you're out in your vegetable garden, of course, that's a little bit different. There are some organic additives that you can scratch into the top of the soil that'll slowly release without burning your garden. Or you can add organic matter. Hopefully you have a compost pile. You could add some coffee grounds. You want to do that sparingly if you're doing them directly on the garden. They're best if they're composted first, but and one of the kind of cheap and easy mulches is a light covering of straw. Some people don't like that aesthetics, but it does, because of the way the straw will lay. If you didn't put it too thick, the rain will percolate through it. It shades weed seeds from germinating, so that makes that part of the job a little easier, and it helps hold a little moisture later as the summer gets drier and drier. And it does break down over time, so next year it has enriched your soil. The little wormies like it, and they'll come and work the soil, and we love what wormies leave behind, because there is nothing nicer than worm castings, aka worm poop. It's a great non-toxic fertilizer. Actually, you can buy it in some lawn centers. There are people who have worm farms and sell the castings, and will give you recipes either to how to make a tea so you can water your house plants or your small garden plants, and then how to work it into soil proportionately so that it enriches. And some of my garden club members have done comparisons, and they report that they have had great success in a greater yield, like on their tomato plants, with using worm castings. So there you go.
Can you buy worm castings?
Yes.
Can you?
Yes. I don't know that I've seen them locally. Big centers in the city have them, big nursery centers. And there was a lady, I'd have to check with my buddies over in Columbus, who had a worm farm, and she sold bags of them. You could get like a 5 or a 10, maybe even, I'm trying to think how big that, maybe a 15-pound bag of worm castings, and it lasts for quite a while because I used it primarily for indoor plants. It has no odor whatsoever, and you could scratch it in to the surface of indoor plants, and it slowly feeds. You can actually add a few tablespoons to like a jug of water, and it looks like tea. Don't drink it, but it's called worm tea, and you can water plants with that. So yeah, I will check that out and share that information, how to get that product. I don't know whether, because I haven't looked recently, whether the generic big box stores carry it. It's not real cheap, I'll tell you that, but it certainly, you would use it sparingly. It's what I would call a good value.
Okay.
So there you go. If you're going to add mulch this summer, maybe you haven't gotten that done, couple reminders. When you're putting mulch out, don't make it so thick. Commercially, you will see that done, and you will think that that is the example that you need to follow. And without disparaging any of the commercial people, some of whom I hire for various jobs, so it's not a critique. But remember, they make their money on what they sell. So sometimes it's an advantage to sell a lot of mulch. I've seen this done particularly in retail establishments. They hire teams that come in, and, you know, there may be like 10 Wendy's restaurants in a, 5-county area or something, and they'll have a team that'll come do them all. And so, they do a beautiful job, but they probably put it on a little thick. So when you're doing it at home, a couple of inches is more than enough to be effective, and you don't want it packed real tight, or else it'll actually repel water. And around stems of either a bush, a tree, or a flowering plant, make sure that you leave about a 3-inch ring, because if that mulch is up against those stems, there's a greater risk for some disease, because it kind of packs there and it'll harbor insects. So just be aware of that, not to get it too tight and too close. If you have an irrigation system, make sure that you have that under the mulch. You don't want to water on top of the mulch, or you'll waste a lot of your water. I just got a message from somebody. You might check with Chris at Expressions to see if they still have some worm castings. They've had them in the past. So there's an answer to that question. And I do think it's a great product. Do you love flowers? Because there is still some time that you can add some flower seeds if you got a little corner of your garden that maybe didn't perform well. I've got one little corner where I've had a little problem with damping off, which I had flowering plants that started, and there was something in the soil, a fungus, and I was yelling at the squirrels thinking that they had broken the plant and all that stuff. And no, it was just this fungal thing. But if you've cleaned up the soil issue, I wouldn't put the same plant back, but you could plant some seeds. You still have time. You could put some zinnia seeds out, nasturtiums, and some of the easy ones that are start from seeds. Sunflowers, of course, we already talked about it. And even marigolds, they germinate pretty quickly, and they will catch up. They're going to be behind right now because other things have been growing for about 10 weeks, but they will catch up, and they'll actually be the ones that look really nice at the end of the summer, instead of like, okay, we fought the fight as long as we want to.
Are we too late for like a wildflower mix? You can just...
No, but I'm glad you brought that up. It depends on what you're going to get. I'm going to express a strong caution, and that is when you go commercially, because all of us read almost daily, those of us that love gardening, almost daily about the desperate need for pollinators, for native plants, so on and so forth. And those in the commercial arena have taken advantage of our eagerness, and they do what are called wildflower mixes. Don't get tricked. Most of those are annuals. Most of those in those mixes are not native plants. So it's much better to source native plants to this area, to Indiana, through the Indiana Plant and Wildflowers. No, that's not what they're called. Indiana Native Plant Society, sorry. They have a list on their website, and it'll guide you as to what plants to seek. And those are the ones that really support the flora and fauna that we want to boost. Some of those native plants, say, for instance, if you want to support monarchs and you want to do some of the milkweed family, which is their host plant, they would actually need to scarify, which means they need to have a freezing cycle before they would actually germinate. So if you planted them now, nothing's going to happen other than most likely some critter's going to come eat a seed. But if you do them in the fall, some people even will refrigerate them for a period of time and germinate them, in flower pots over the winter time. I've had best success in planting those seeds late in the fall or putting them where I want them, and they will come up. It may be a couple of years until they flower because they have to get to that amount of maturity. But there are some plants that do take that kind of life cycle, if you will, to actually germinate. But there are others that will support pollinators. They may not be the first choice. And I know Jeff Ludlow's listening right now, and he's probably rolling his eyes and going, "Don't say this, Sarah." So with deference to my good friend Jeff, who really does support native plants to the max, some things like zinnias and cosmos, they're nice nectar plants for butterflies, and it's not the full life cycle support, but it is a place for them to get a snack. And as long as you're not spraying or doing anything with poisons, that'll be just fine. It's what I would call fast food for the pollinators rather than, the regular substantive things that they need for the whole life cycle. That would include trees and shrubs and grasses and so on and so forth. So it's the mix. But you could still do some of those, and there is still time for those. I just planted last week, actually, some cosmos seed, specifically for that reason, so that I have late summer nectaring flowers where I can see them out the bathroom window and from my deck. So that was purely for my pleasure. So
Nothing wrong with that.
No, not at all. I have some of the other things like parsley and dill and fennel for the swallowtails, because that's their caterpillar. That's who wants to eat those, and I grow those a little bit for my cooking, but mostly for those caterpillars to just chomp them away, because they are part of the cycle. Even though they're squishy, they're good guys. So pruning. Everybody always wants to know, when can I shape my bushes? When can I cut my flowering bushes? This is the end of the time when you can safely trim those bushes that flowered in the spring. Look at them, gently shape them. You don't want to do severe pruning or else you won't have flowers next year. They are getting ready to, or in the process as we speak, depending on how early they bloomed, like forsythia's pretty early. They may be already setting buds, so be aware that some of the trimming, if you do very much, you might limit the amount of flower for next year, but many of those are very safe to trim and shape because you don't want to do the spring flowering ones this fall when they're driving you crazy because they look a little shaggy. So it's now for those. Anything that blooms after the mid of June, don't touch them or you'll get nothing but green bushes this year. One thing when you are pruning, your tools, of course you want them to be clean and sharp because you don't need to make it harder to work. But also, and this, I think we all fail to do this and then wonder what happened. We don't clean those blades off before we go to the next shrub or bush. And as long as the bush is not diseased, you're probably on a low risk. But certainly if you're going from one variety to another, I would strongly encourage you just clean off those blades. Some people will use a rubbing alcohol solution, even a soapy solution, and then rinse and wipe them off. It seems like an extra step, but I had a professional tree trimmer come once to get an aberrant branch on a huge elm tree, which we don't see a lot of anymore. And those saws were used for many things, and it ended up dying from some disease transmission. Lesson learned. I had lots of naivete in my early days. I still get tricked. We all do. It happens, and hopefully we learn from it and that sort of thing. One of the things when you prune, it does open up a little airflow, so less likely you'll get some of the fungal diseases. And when we have this much rain, you're going to see some effect of fungal diseases on some of your plants. It should be short-lived as soon as we dry out and it heats up. I would like to know from the crowd out in radio land, do you remove suckers or not? And particularly, I'd be interested on your strawberry plants and your tomato plants, because there's all kinds of debates. They are called suckers, and on tomatoes, and if you're not aware, these are the stems that are primarily leaf-bearing that come from the axis or the V of two main stems on a tomato plant. And they're called suckers because it is felt that they suck nutrients from the plant. Well, there is a school of thought that says, nope, that's more green leaves that produces more food for the plant so that, the bloom-bearing branches then have more support, blah, blah, blah. I'd love to hear what anybody's opinion is on that. Same with strawberries. Some people trim those runners so that they don't end up with a kind of a messy mat. And others are very selective about what they keep in order to keep the vigor and to reduce disease on their strawberry plants. So tell me what you think. So tell me about your garden at this point, Miss Emily. What's growing? What's failing?
I did not get my compost garden, the straw bale garden done this year, but we're going to do it next
It's
year.
okay. It's
Yes.
okay.
Well, we're kind of everybody's transitioning property right now.
Yeah.
So we're
Let's have more chaos, right?
that's right, more chaos. But my flowers are doing, and I keep saying I'm going to do a little video because at home I have flowers from like everywhere I go. I like to get them. So like,
Oh, I think it's
I have
most
them from
fun.
everywhere in the county. I have them from Shelby County, and they're
Awesome.
just all like thriving this
Yes.
year. Like I've gradually built my flowers, and I do a lot of baskets and things because of my porches. But this year it's like everybody's so happy, and it's been the rain. I think a lot of it. We've had a decent amount of sunshine, not enough for me,
Right,
but
right.
it's coming along. But my daylilies, my grandparents transplanted those to my house from theirs. We live across the field from
Oh,
each
so
other.
that's even more special.
It is, yes. So and that was actually summer before they passed. So this is their fourth summer where they're at. And so this year they're like, hello, yes. And they all just, it's like they don't all bloom at one time. They just pop, Oh,
Yes.
it's been good.
That is great
Yes.
fun. And I'm going to tell a funny story on my dad about daylilies. So back in the day, my mother had a small rose garden, and these were the old-fashioned tea roses that took meticulous attention and care. You had to treat regularly for black spot. You had to fertilize every, I think, 10 days. And you added this and you took away that and you trimmed this and you pruned that. And it was a love and passion of hers. And one particular summer, my mom was particularly busy and maybe a little under the weather, so my dad thought that he would be helpful. And he went in the garage and thought he got the spray for the black spot, but he actually had gotten Roundup,
Oh my.
and it was the end of the rose garden.
Oh my.
And, they were married decades. But I don't think it was very pleasant in that household for a period of time after that. So my siblings and I decided, and my mom just said, okay, I'm done. And we're like, well, you shouldn't really just quit, because it was lovely. She had this circle out in the middle of the lawn in a beautiful sunny spot, and it was like, there needs to be something out there. So we went, it was when Betty Palenka was still alive, out near Alert, and she grew a variety of daylilies. So I went and picked her brain, and she gave me a variety. So we had early ones, mid-season, late, short, medium, and tall.
Yeah.
And we planted them in this circle. And we told my dad, whose birthday is in the middle of July, you have one job with the daylilies. You may water them on your birthday. Because daylilies, essentially, when they're established, they're
They
good
just-
to go.
yeah.
You can add compost in the spring, and they will thank you for it. But they are not difficult once they are
not.
established. But we said, okay, here's your one day. You can help
can
in the
do
garden.
this. That's
you can
right.
just plain water
Water 'em.
once a year.
I love it. It's been good to see because mine have just taken off and grown so much over the last few years. So, what was funny is that day I came home. I was working 2 different practices at that time. Came home in between to change to go to the next one, and they're out in the front of my house planting flowers. Didn't know this was happening, but my grandma always, because I maybe wasn't quite the flower person just yet. I was coming
Yeah,
into it
yep,
at that
yep.
point, but she was bound and determined.
She was going to convert you.
She was going to convert me, and she was going to plant flowers, and they were going to look good. And so they have continued to do well.
There
But,
you go.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
I think one of my favorite things, and you've just attested to that, is when I go out in my garden, because, it started with 0 funds.
Mm-hmm.
And so both my joys and my mistakes have come from gifts from other people. And I go out in my garden and I go, oh, there's Aunt Helen.
Yes.
And there's Jeanette, and there's Harriet, and These people are long gone from this earth, but they live on in our yards, and some of them, like I said, they were gifts that apparently keep on giving because they're known as invasives, and I didn't know that at the time, because we learn as we go, and so they probably took over a little more space than we really wanted. But, we associate them. We have a tree that blooms near my son's birthday. We have ditch lilies. I know a lot of people don't like them. I do. I'm one of the weirdos. But they always bloom on my daughter Emily's birthday. So, we have all those connections. And, I look at my flower pots this year and I'm like, oh, those plants came from my grandson's school, So
yeah, it's a great connector.
It is a connector, and it's a great way to continue that give and take process, and one of the joys that gardening brings to us all, no doubt about it.
I have to tell you too, I've never been in the rosebush world. Okay. My grandma was a rose person.
It's disappearing, sadly.
Yeah, and my mom has a few. So we were actually down at Kaminsky.
Oh, it's Streamcliff.
Yes, Streamcliff.
Love that place.
And it's called a rock and roll rose.
How fun.
And it's like a red and pink, almost tie-dye-ish look.
Yeah, it kind of has smeary. Interesting colors.
It's very, very pretty, and it had bloomed when I bought it.
Okay.
And it's getting ready to bloom again. So I feel like that's some success.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's way fun. And it just points out, don't be afraid to try something that you've never done.
As I say, all can happen is it could die. So,
It could, but
it could also live and be good.
And of course you mentioned Streamcliff. That is a place that has continued to invent itself, and I never go there without leaving with a smile on my face or something in my car.
Yes. And usually a full belly on top of that.
Oh, isn't it delightful? Yes.
Yeah, there's so many good places around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're close to our time
we
limit.
are. We sure
and
are.
And it's been fun. I wish more of you had called in, or perhaps on the WTRE Facebook page, you can put some suggestions, and we'll try to get experts in to chat you up.
Sarah and I will cover whatever topic you got, right?
That's right. And, like I always say, if I don't know, I'll make it up.
That's right. Well, it's been a great day having you in here. We love it, and we'll see you again next month.
That's right.
It's 9:58 on Tree Country.